Hello, everybody. This is Luna calling. Luna, that is lacking unity, neighboring anarchy. Luna's calling all lovers of deep, deep, profound questions. We're super excited today because this is episode 6. We're looking at the end of Descartes' third meditation, and we're very lucky because we have a special guest, Nalla Diallo. Hello, Nalla.
Hello, hello, hello.
Nalla is a student of philosophy here next to the Seine. He's a songwriter, an artist, a guitarist extraordinaire in the famous group Sonder Rage, continually touring here in Europe. Up for touring in Australia, Japan, America, anywhere.
Inshallah.
Anyone that will take them.
Yeah.
That's right. Anywhere with a stage.
Mm-hmm.
And a microphone, maybe.
Maybe.
Not unlike us. It is an absolute delight to have you here, Nalla. Obviously, for those of us who have already been listening, my name's Val. This is Ol. And we also have Nalla, of course.
Hello, hello, hello.
So here we are. We've come to the end of meditation 3. Descartes has, he believes, successfully proved the existence of God, Nalla. He's got this idea in his head of this omnipotent, all good, all powerful, perfect being. And because he's a very thorough guy, very thorough, very methodical, he's just going to test this hypothesis. And he's going to say, hang on. If there isn't a God, right, if I got it all wrong, if there isn't a God, then where did I come from?
And this is the great kind of, I suppose, philosophical question. Where did I come from? And given that you are the guest on today's episode, this is the question that Descartes is going to be posing of himself. We're going to ask you, what set you off on this philosophical journey? How does that combine with your passion for music? There must be some kind of relation, hopefully. If I've understood Descartes, there's got to be some kind of causal relationship between them all.
Yeah, you could say that. I definitely got into philosophy and music around the same time. But, I've always had some engagement with, like, the ideas surrounding philosophy. I grew up Muslim, and me and my dad would study and talk about the Quran a lot. And so I was already used to, like, engaging with stuff critically, I also went to a critical thinking school, a classical education school.
Whereabouts was that?
In Washington, D.C., actually. We had to learn Latin,
No way.
Yeah.
They do critical thinking in Washington, D.C.
I know, it's hard to believe.
How about that?
In Latin.
Yeah, in Latin, yeah.
Yeah.
They, it seems like they've stopped, but,
Yeah.
back in my day.
back when you were there. Okay, so you went to this critical. Was this part of your high school education? Or?
Yes, it was actually after 6th grade.
Whoa.
Until graduation, so a lot of my youth was spent there. But I wasn't interested in philosophy until my senior year, actually.
Okay, and so what sparked that kind of interest or that change?
Well, I think it was mostly seeing philosophy represented in my life, Before I went to this class, it's called Honors Humanities. Most of my philosophical, like, education and experience came from my Latin class.
Yeah.
Where we would go over old texts from people who died 1,000 years ago, and we wouldn't speak the language, we'd only read it, and it wasn't very engaging. There was nothing that would really, like, reflect back on my life, obviously, But in this Honors Humanities class, we went over W.E.B. Du Bois, Tolstoy, and these were things that I was thinking about around race, around life.
Wow.
That really just made me want to engage more with philosophy and think more critically about it, because things like, I remember especially the W.E.B. Du Bois's idea of a veiled soul. I haven't read it since high school, so I don't know if this is accurate, but the way that he described the black man's soul in America, I think still holds true to today. And it very deeply, like, affected me and made me want to pursue philosophy, I guess, even though people say it's a sociology work.
Yeah, well, I mean, he's a tremendous writer, like, just absolutely just so moving, and the force of his ideas is really a demonstration of that kind of relationship, the practical relationship with, people kind of, disparage philosophy for being just this intellectual exercise, but you kind of see the force and the power of words. And I suppose, I mean, I suppose we owe you an apology for making you come back here and discuss another Latin writer author, but instead of doing
At least it's not in Latin.
this is not 1,000 years in the past. This is only a few hundred years in the past. So
Yeah.
slowly, maybe you'll be reading some more modern Latin texts.
I must say, though, I have seen the wisdom of what they've been talking about. I'm currently writing my thesis on people who died, I think, close to 1,000, almost 2,000 for one of them years ago.
Yeah. Well, isn't that a testament to, I suppose, what's so animating and engaging about philosophical thought is it's like the questions remain. I don't want to say the questions are still the same, but there's a force to certain questions that get repeated
Yeah.
and still have this kind of contemporary relevancy today, even though they were posed thousands of years ago. But what's interesting is not just the question, but it's how do people try and answer it, right?
Yep.
Is that
I want to go back to this, like reading the Quran with your dad
Yeah.
and discussing it with him. That sounds like an amazing experience.
Oh yeah.
And I was wondering, like, were there particular questions that you'd focus on?
Yeah.
How would he go about it? That kind of thing.
Growing up, I was really focused on the more, I guess, metaphysical aspects of the Quran, which, again, I'm writing my thesis on metaphysics now, so. But there's a concept in Islam of the unseen. There's two worlds. There's the world of the seen and the world of the unseen. And there are creatures that inhabit the world of the unseen in Islam called jinn. And
Right.
these jinn are not necessarily bad or good. I know the Western perception of jinn is very negative.
as an evil spirit of
Yes,
sorts? Yeah.
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 Now, like shaitan, like Satan, is a jinn in Islam. But not all jinn are evil. Some can be Muslims. And this, when I was growing up, was very like, wait, if the most evil guy is one of them, why don't we hate them,
Yeah.
But it was things like this. Another big one that I'm still grappling with right now, I guess, is questions around the human soul. In Islam and in Sufism specifically, there's a lot of focus around the soul, and specifically a bipartite soul,
Right.
There's this idea of ruh, which is like the more, I don't know if more or less is a good word here, but it's got more associations with, let's say, like good things, like a rational thing. It's the type of thing that'll make you call your mom in the middle of the night, just to say
Right.
hi,
Yeah.
But there's also the nafs, which is the self. And this is something that is very, very important in Islam, the struggle against it. There's a hadith, that's actually my favorite hadith.
Huh.
It's after the early Muslims, because they had to flee from Mecca
Yeah.
to Medina during something called the, Hijrah, right? After they came back from defending themselves in battle, Muhammad is reported to have said, the lesser jihad is over now. It's time for the greater jihad. And this greater jihad is the jihad al-nafs, the jihad against the self or the ego or the...
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Wow,
Yeah.
I mean, this is quite an interesting, obviously, like the idea that there's a partition in the soul,
Yeah.
right? That there's these two, which Descartes is going to absolutely be
Yep.
against, right? Like the soul is indivisible. Is that correct, Oliver?
Well,
Have
he's
I-
gonna. I mean, it's interesting because you can kind of think about. He strips his own subjectivity back, right? So he gets rid of his passions, he gets rid of his feelings, he gets rid of his attachment to the external world
Yep.
via this weird exercise of doubt. But it is a kind of. I mean, there are people who've said this is a spiritual exercise.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's stripping things back down to the self understood in a very pure way as this thinking thing.
Yeah.
So there could be a parallel there. But can you like say a little bit more about this the distinction between the myor, if I've got that correct, and the naf, like the
Ruh.
ruh.
Yeah.
Sorry, yeah,
And the nafs.
right. What's the
It's-
distinction?
Well, again, this is a hard one. The distinction, as I see it, right, because I've taken a kind of view from my, readings in philosophy, that the ruh is more so oriented towards intellectual things, I guess, or like this is good. I want to do this because I believe that this is good. It's oriented towards something higher than oneself. And the nafs is something that's oriented towards yourself. Now, this isn't necessarily bad, I don't think, right?
Yeah.
There are things that you can do for yourself that are good, There are certain situations where you have to think about yourself and where you have to do something for yourself. But I think the struggle against the nafs, not necessarily the destruction of the self, which is a different thing,
Yeah.
but not necessarily bad as well. It's a different concept of fana, annihilation of the self. But the struggle against the nafs, I think, is important because you have to recognize when or how you should do this struggle against yourself. That's another thing,
Right.
you know? Yeah.
So that's like a kind of practical
Yeah.
set of exercises.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And how is this kind of guided when you're trying to determine, you know, which parts are going to be included in the struggle? What parts are the negative, I suppose, that needs to be not annihilated, as you say, but you know, contained or combated in some. What is the method? If maybe I'm being too Cartesian, but what is the kind of the process in which you work out?
Of course, I think it starts with identification. You have to identify where these things are coming from, where your thoughts, where your ideas of things, where your feelings, your actions, your wills, your intentions. What are your intentions? That's the first thing you have to identify, I think, to understand if we're talking about an action, you know, where it comes from. But I think a good example, I guess, because, you know, it is currently Ramadan, might be like fasting, right?
Yeah.
I know there's a social aspect to fasting as well in many Muslim countries, so that might kind of interfere with it. But say you're like me, you know, you're in a country that's not predominantly Muslim, and you're fasting, and someone offers you a croissant, you know?
Yeah.
Nafs might say, oh, I'm hungry, I want this croissant, you know?
Yeah.
The ruh will tell you no, you know?
Ah, yeah, okay.
Yeah, that sounds like there's some parallels there because Descartes. I mean, like Spinoza's going to have like a real go at Descartes later on by saying, you know, Descartes is somebody who believes that reason can overcome the passions. That there's a kind of a combat between them. But I want to go back to these jinn like that. So is like. Does the unseen kind of like penetrate the scene? Is it commingled? Are there like jinn all around us all the time?
Yes.
Well, yes.
And
I mean, sorry, just very quickly on this point, my housemate, when I moved in, was very adamant and careful to inform me that there's a lot of jinn in our apartment, and they're responsible for if there's flickering lights that are occurring, that's just the jinn. And after a few weeks of me living there, I reported back and I said, well, I haven't really noticed much of the flickering lights. And she said, that is excellent. It must mean that the jinn like you.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Hey, I mean, yes, there definitely is a conception of the jinn being able to affect and permeate through the physical world. However, I think there is a lot. Well, this is my opinion, of course.
Yes.
I'm not the, you know, Pope of Islam, but I do think that I've observed, I guess, that there's a lot of cultural interactions, like with any religion, that come into it. And a lot of conceptions of the jinn, of course, come from pre-Islamic Arabian, pre-Islamic, I know specifically Fulani culture. Even my great-grandpa, right? Samba Jallo, right? People used to say, because he would wander off into the desert so often, that he had a jinn wife that he was going to visit, you know? There's a lot of folktale and mythology around the jinn, you know?
Right.
Yeah.
But they definitely do have an effect on us. Yeah.
So they're like a kind of calling, like a kind of they can draw us in different directions. They affect our desires.
Yeah.
Yeah, they interact with the material world in some respects, but it's not always clear which one is doing. Is it an evil jinn or is it a good one? We don't really know exactly how it functions. And
But this is
yeah,
this is fascinating because I mean one thing that I really liked, I mean just to like go off on a complete tangent, but like one thing I loved about the Lord of the Rings when I read it as a kid was that unlike all the Hollywood movies and the Disney movies that I'd seen, there were characters that were neither good nor bad but neutral.
Yep.
Yeah, Tom Bombadil being the classic one.
Yeah, they were neutral.
was,
So they're also unpredictable. You didn't know which way they were going to land. And so it added like a lot of drama to the story.
Oh, yeah.
And it added a massive question about what they wanted because you didn't know. They weren't necessarily on your side. I mean, like the protagonists in Tolkien, after all, they presume that they're good, right? But you just didn't know which way the neutral characters were going to land.
Yeah, and that's also interesting, particularly, I mean, in Lord of the Rings as well, is like, so it's typically cast as this kind of classic good versus evil, good is on the way to destroy evil, but then when you actually look at the Tolkien kind of mythology, the most powerful, Tom Bombadil being one of them, the most powerful beings in the Lord of the Rings universes universe is exactly all of these contingent neutral characters where you don't know what they're doing. So it's like there's the most powerful beings in the Tolkien universe is contingency, not good versus evil, right? So it's like this really interesting question, right?
Yeah, it seems to me like in the West, we've lost that capacity to think in terms of, or to allow a space for neutral beings.
Yeah.
Because you've got this absolute like Manichaean like dichotomy between good people and evil people. You've got major geopolitical initiatives at the moment being justified by apparently the fact that some people are evil.
Yeah.
And so it's not about petrol.
No, it's not about any material resources.
Not about defending allies.
It's about, it's a clash of civilizations kind of thesis at work, right? It's we in the civilized, enlightened West, the good Judeo-Christian values against, the Orient, as they like to put it.
Bring back the neutral beings. That's what I want to say. Like, bring back the neutral spirits. Like, let's complicate things.
Yeah. Nalla, I wanted to go back a bit to you were mentioning the kind of social, cultural elements, particularly, given that it is Ramadan at the moment, and you were talking about, obviously, when you were speaking about your understanding of Islam, there's enormous variation as there is in any kind of religion. And I was just curious because I just had my first experience of being in a Muslim country during Ramadan. As I went to Tunisia. So I went out into the desert, and so I was just interested in this kind of question of like jinns, but then also getting to see for the first time in a Muslim country, really like Ramadan, and just the way that the entire country like just was transformed. It's just like,
unfortunately, I haven't been in a Muslim country during Ramadan.
But I mean, just in terms of your own experience, like you mentioned that the way that you relate to, for example, Ramadan, but you can use any example that you like in a country that is not predominantly Muslim. Just how the different, what are some of the social aspects or elements that you see in your experience of it?
Of Ramadan?
Yeah.
Well, growing up, I think I grew up in a very different time than even right now. There was a lot of Islamophobia in the States when I was growing up. And so I get mixed reactions, Sometimes people will be like, oh, that's cool, Ramadan, Other times people would be like, oh, don't blow me up,
Because this is the post 9/11 world, right?
Exactly. But I think it's a similar story for anyone who practices a minority religion.
Yes.
It's a very, I think it can be both isolating and community building at the same time. Where it kind of makes you recognize and realize how special and how unique and how much you enjoy your religion.
Yeah.
But also at the same time, it'll make you realize what you have to deal with, the cost of it.
Yeah, it's the struggle to maintain, that like particularly as you so eloquently put it, it's like when you're in a minority position, it's the struggle of establishing an identity, building community around those identities, and kind of I suppose this struggle, particularly in a right after 9/11, the Islamophobia globally, was just this kind of massive force. I can't really speak about the 90s because I wasn't fully quite formed there, but Islamophobia, like no one was talking about Islam really. Like there was the Gulf Wars and things like that. But like the identification of like Islam being the enemy is really like a post 9/11 kind of phenomenon, right, Ol?
Yeah, I can, speak for the 70s and the 80s.
Yes.
Because I was actually around then.
You were there,
and I can say that, just as with anti-Semitism, there's a long history to Islamophobia, of course, but it became, it was transformed post 9/11.
Yeah.
And I remember sitting I was actually in FNAC. For those of you who are not in France, this is like the shop where you buy your TVs and all your black goods and your white goods and so on.
Like a Maya or a David Jones of some big
Best
department.
Buy for Americans.
And I was sitting in front of a wall of televisions, and my brother was like, Lex was with me at the time.
Yeah.
And I just started like turning all the TVs onto the same channel and watching this thing happen. And then I ran down to Cafe Oz, to the Australian bar where I was working at the time. And I said to my brother, the world is going to take a turn for the worst.
Yeah.
And
Well,
Islamophobia was part of that turn for the worse.
Yeah, it becomes, and I had the kind of classic 90s kid experience of it where I'd woken up and I was like, where are my morning cartoons? Like I kept changing the channel, and it's like every night, every kid will be able to tell you the same story. It was like, well, I want to watch, Card Captors or Sailor Moon or Cheese TV for the Australians. Yeah, but it was just but then, this kind of thing where Islamophobia, which obviously has an incredibly long history, becomes the dominating idea in geopolitics, right? And we're seeing that we're seeing the result of that obviously more and more.
Yeah.
But
in
I
its
mean,
message
you
and
have to
stuff.
say also, in France, the situation is very complicated because you've actually got like legalized Islamophobia in terms of the law on the veil, targeting specifically young women who are working through their religious identity. It's just ridiculous.
Yeah, so much for the société laïque.
Secular country.
society.
Yeah.
It's
You
very,
can wear
very,
visible
very Catholic for a secular country.
Yeah. But one of the things about living in a country where a significant part of the population actually do come from North Africa, is you can have everyday conversations. And so I was in an Uber with my wife, and she's practicing Lent. She's practicing Carême at the moment, and Ramadan and Carême are actually they're completely overlapping at the moment. So she had a lot in common, and could talk about what she was giving up. And let me tell you, Ramadan's a lot tougher than Lent for a lot of people, because you got to wait till sundown.
Yes.
To eat and drink.
Yeah. So I was wondering, maybe we could come back to I suppose the question, well, one of the animating questions at the beginning, because I'm always fascinated, myself being what I would designate as a failed musician, the transition between or your influence, like the way that the way that you interact with philosophy, and if that has some kind of when you're writing music, or do you think what your compositions are philosophically, or is it, I'm not sure. It's always this kind of, is it a reflexive practice when you're or when you're performing live? There's often the idea that you're not the one on stage. You've become part of this one body, this one group, and it's sometimes like a transcendental thing where you play the first note, and then suddenly you come to at the end of the show, and you're like, well, that was, it's a, I'm just interested.
I wish.
Do you have some kind
No.
of, no, you're just living every moment, every strum is just grinding you into the ground.
Yeah. I mean, I play with my thumb, and I do feel every grind, every.
Oh, yeah.
But I think I do definitely. There is a philosophical and religious connection for me with music. There's a Sufi practice called dhikr, which is remembrance, and some Sufi tariqat, like orders, they will practice this by having drums, having singing, having an oud, maybe something like that, And I really enjoy this kind of music, and I've been listening to it a lot, especially because it's Ramadan. But also, when it comes to making my own music, I don't think when it comes to the actual musical composition of what I'm writing, think philosophically or really even religiously either. But it might be interesting to start. But when it comes to the lyrics, I certainly do. I try to put, what I think about the world, what I believe. I really like writing poems, and especially after doing some research on Sufi poets like Rumi and Khalaj and Ghazali for my thesis, I've been very inspired by them to write a lot more. And there's a long tradition of Sufi poets writing like lovers to God, treating God as their lover. So
Did you do you read this is because it's my personal favorite Sufi poet, the Rubaya of Omar Khayyam?
No.
Oh, you've never? I think he's what we now call Iran. But he wrote this beautiful long poem called the Rubaya. That I memorized quite a few passages of it because it was one of my grandfather's favorite poems. And so when I was out in the Sahara it was last week. Because when the sun comes up over this, and when it sets over the desert, right? I know you're not supposed to do this, but you can basically look directly at it because it's a perfect sphere. I know you're not.
Especially with the sand reflect.
Yeah, well, it's like, but you can see the sun as a perfect sphere, that you normally can't see it as, right? And so when it comes up and when it goes down, obviously when it goes higher up, this is when it's like right at the horizon level, and then you can see the sun cut in, like it's cut in half, and then it rises up, and you see this perfect sphere. And as it was coming up in the morning, there's this really beautiful line from the Rubaiyat. The way that it begins is it goes, "Awake, for the morning in the bowl of night has flung the stone that sets the stars to flight, and lo, the hunter of the east has caught the sultan's turret in a noose of light. And dreaming when dawn's left hand was in the sky, I heard a voice within the tavern cry, quickly, little ones, drink up before life's liquor in its cup be dry."
Yeah.
He's this beautiful Sufi kind
mashallah.
of poet. That I really like him.
No, that's lovely.
So it was just like this kind of, it was really just nice getting to. I love reciting a bit of poetry as the sun's coming up.
Oh yeah.
I mean, there's an amazing connection there, though, because you were saying, Nalla, that a lot of these Sufi poems are about lovers of God.
Yes. And as he said in the poem, actually, the tavern as well.
Yes.
And drinking wine as an allegory for the mystical confusion that comes with God, you know?
Well, that's amazing, because what we've got, like, you know, I mean, back at the end of episode 3, like what Descartes is driving towards is a position of being a lover of God.
Yeah.
But there's no confusion. That's the thing. And that's,
I think there must be confusion. You're not perfect, you know, you're not infinite.
Well, that's right. He does say that. So he's imperfect. Yeah, you're right, because he's imperfect, and he kind of wants to achieve things. He aspires to things, and on the other hand, he's got this God who is perfect, who is complete, who's actual, who's infinite, and he yearns for that God.
Yearning. That's a good one.
Well, he has this, and this is precisely the thing. He's full of confusions. He's full of doubts. He recognizes, his own finitude, his own defects, but he has this, exactly as Ol just said, there is this perfect God here that I am not confused about. I'm confused. The confusion, and this is, I think I mentioned in a few episodes ago, there's the Georgian philosopher Merab Marmadashvili. I always mess up pronouncing his last name, but he wrote these Cartesian meditations, and he's always got this kind of reading where God is innocent. For Descartes, God is innocent of everything, and all error lays on the side of us because we are the finite ones, right? God doesn't make mistakes.
Yeah.
Apparently, he also doesn't play dice, but I've been told we shouldn't tell God what to do. But that's this kind of interesting, parallel that's going on here, right? There is Descartes is willing to say, I am confused about myself, but what I need to be certain of, so that I know anything about the world, is God, and I can be certain about God because of this this is how he's justifying it, whether or not you buy the argument. But this is the point of the meditations on first philosophy, right?
I think you can be certain. I don't think you can be certain about God. I think certainty. If you're certain of something, I guess. That limits that thing in my mind. It traps that thing in your mind. The certainty, your knowledge of it. It's like saying that you're aware of the expression of this thing in all forms. You're certain that this is the way that it expresses itself, which I'm not.
Can you doubt that God exists, though?
Me? I don't, but I mean, like, I don't philosophically. I believe in God, but I mean, of course, I do occasionally,
But the other thing, I mean, to just to take Descartes' side for a second, like he says, like we can't understand God, like we can't understand in the sense of grasping God, because as finite beings, we can't grasp the infinite.
We can't know everything about God. We can't describe all of its qualities.
But he says we can conceive of God, right? So he says, like, if you're going to say that God is the author of your being, that God is infinite, that God is all powerful, that God created the universe, that God is good, and that God knows everything, then that is an idea of God. It's quite defined. It's definite. It doesn't mean that you understand that omnipotence in terms of being able to imagine it or grasp what it actually means, but you can actually, in a way, name God.
I don't know. I agree, actually. Yes. Okay. I think I agree, but I think it's more so just pointing to it,
Yeah, like a kind of index, like a indication. Yeah. Well, I think that's the interesting thing, because, one of the other places that he ends up in this meditation, and I don't want to do a spoiler here, is that the idea of God in us is actually both a sign of God's existence, it's his signature, and it's also a gateway, in that it's through that idea of God that for Descartes we access God.
Yeah.
That's a very
Yeah, we are marked by God, and God is the craftsman of us. And just as a craftsman leaves their mark on everything that it makes, it's a point of identification. That's how it's one of the things. That's one of the ways in which I know that I was created by God.
I think that he was spitting.
Yeah,
I agree.
Had some
He cooked.
buzz.
Yeah.
He was dropping some lines. So I think we should go through these different hypotheses of how he actually gets there, right? Because we start the episode, we ask Nalla, where did you come from? What's your philosophical journey?
Yeah.
But maybe we should look at how Descartes does it as well, because it maps onto a lot of things that we've been talking about already throughout this conversation, right?
Absolutely. Well, he starts off by saying, as I said before, let's just assume for a second that I'm wrong, that my demonstration doesn't work, and that God doesn't exist. So what kinds of answers are you going to have to the big question, where do I come from? And, Nalla, Val, he comes up with 4 responses. I have to say, he's pretty thorough. He pretty much covers the ground. So if you're an atheist, you've got your answer here. If you're somebody who thinks that we can conquer the universe through technology and that we can be superhuman, then if you're a tech bro, you've got your answer here.
Yeah, if you're a Silicon Valley tech bro, it's like Descartes going to be he's talking to you.
If you're a psychoanalyst,
Peter
and you
Thiel,
say,
listen up.
Yeah.
That's right. If you're a psychoanalyst, third hypothesis, you come from your parents and they're imperfect.
Yeah.
So you've got that answer. That's there as well. And then even if you're some kind of like hippie, Deleuzian, Guattarian, molecular line of flight, assemblage kind of reader.
Fluxy,
Yeah, one of those people that Val and I know from grad school in philosophy.
Yes.
I didn't understand it.
No, you're going to meet them sooner or later. I'm sorry about this.
You've been very fortunate in your education.
Yeah, we can introduce you to some if you want. So
no, much love to our Deleuzian listeners, if there are any. I don't know. Maybe they've got better
maybe
things to
they've
be
been alienated already about all this Descartes.
They
But
already
anyway,
yes.
there's a 4th hypothesis just for them, which is that we come from multiple partial causes. Yeah. We are a swarm.
Yeah.
We are fungal, man.
We're a hive. We're part of the hive mind.
We're like a virus. Yeah.
Okay.
So he covers many different answers across the field of philosophy.
Yeah.
He carves it up into 4 different possibilities.
So the first one's the most obvious one, right? My existence, I guarantee my own existence. I'm the creator of myself. I'm my own author. I'm the one that's responsible. I'm the self. I'm the autonomous individual, I author my own existence. I'm the master of my own destiny. I am the absolute, right? I'm the alpha and the omega of my existence.
Is this what you say in the mirror every morning?
Oh, no. I'm fun. That was the soft version of what I say in the morning. No, that was the PG podcast version.
Oh.
But this is it, right? Like this is I'm the author of my own existence. And of course what Descartes not going to be very happy with this kind of
Well this is going back to this question of the ego that Nalla mentioned earlier, this is like the absolute narcissistic hypothesis. I am everything. I invented myself. I exist. Don't touch me. I'm independent.
Yeah.
Nobody's got anything on me. Yeah. I'm free of guilt. I'm free of shame.
Fully rational, fully self-aware. I know everything about myself, right? Yes, yeah. A little Max Stirner ego in its own kind of moment, right? Mm-hmm. But of course, what's the problem with this? As we've been going through with the different meditations, we're completely defective, right? If I was actually the author of my own existence, why wouldn't I have just made myself perfect and not have to suffer through all of this, suffer through my finitude, suffer as a finite being? Why would my sense perceptions deceive me? If I authored my own existence, why would I make myself defective?
Man, Val, if you were the author of your own existence, that PhD, I tell you, it would have written itself a bit quicker.
It would have been a lot faster. Yeah. But to defend myself, unlike a lot of other PhD, I'm not going to name any names. I did mine 4 years to the day. I got it in on time, no extensions. I didn't do any of this. I wrote it in, got it in on time.
That's faster than me. That's pretty
Yeah.
impressive. I just have to say to all of our listeners, some of you not being in the university world, that is an Olympic performance. Man.
I wasn't burning the midnight candle. I was getting early rest. I had an active social life, and I got it 4 years to the day on time, no extensions. So
I became a monk to finish I lost my love life. I lost my social life. I lost my job. I lost my country. I had to go back home.
yeah, I went back to Australia to finish mine. But yeah, I was there seeing friends, going out, and it was great.
That's completely absurd. You do seem to be the author of your existence, at least in that brief period.
So I can stop with this first hypothesis and let you two do the other three. I am perfect.
You are the author of your being. Well,
I am the absolute. But yes, of course, this is Descartes. Yeah, Descartes is going to say, well, yeah, of course, if I authored my own existence, I would just be perfect, and we wouldn't be even posing ourselves a question, right?
Yeah.
This is a brilliant connection here. I just want to do a shout out to another podcast. So Crisis and Critique, a mate of mine, Frank Ruder, with his partner in crime, Aegon Hamza, have been running this fantastic journal and this fantastic podcast. Yes. And they their most recent episode, they invited Avatar Ronell.
Oh, yes, okay.
Yeah. And she was talking about the structure of tyranny, and she was referring to Hannah Arendt's work. Yeah. And she has this whole thesis about failed sons, and she sees people like, Trump and the rest of them as failed sons. And she was saying, within tyranny, there is no capacity to actually accept error, to actually accept that the self has made a mistake.
Yeah.
And this goes like all the way back to Socrates' argument against Thrasymachus in Book 1 of the Republic, where basically he says you can't have might as right because, you make mistakes. Like you have to, if you just act according to a standard of power, sooner or later you have to accept that some of your actions, like going to war against a country that you don't know anything about, might actually result in a whole bunch of bad consequences for yourself and for everybody. But the whole thing about the tyrant, the narcissist, is that they have to continually put in everybody's face that they're perfect.
Yeah, they've never made a mistake. They've never been in error. I mean, it's one of the classic Trump tactics of I've never heard, or a lot of people on the right wing. There's no apology, to also do the kind of link to Plato and things like that. You've never heard them apologize or admit to a mistake ever. Right.
There's not even justification.
No, they don't even.
There's not even justification. So, at the normative level, they don't need to justify.
There's
They'll just
reason.
Spin another story.
Yeah, there's no use of reason, and it's just it's a refusal of that lesson from the very first book of the Republic that rulers can be in error. Right? It's just this kind of this perpetual refusal of admitting that you've made a mistake, or I didn't quite understand the situation properly, right? Yeah. And this is what Descartes is doing. Descartes is quite, humble in this respect. He goes, okay, I am full of defects, but I kind of view this is where I feel he's being really Christian, right? This is where we kind of get this Catholic, original sin. I am, I'm the source of sin, humanity sins, we get cast out of the Garden of Eden. There's this kind of, I am imperfect before the perfect Lord. This is where I think you get really, because we've been discussing on the podcast over, many episodes. It's like, what kind of Christian, if he's even a Christian at all, is Descartes? And this is one of those moments where I think, I'm an imperfect being in front of a perfect being, God. You get him really just sticking to the canon, right?
I don't know. I don't think the dichotomy in itself is inherently Christian. If you're a monotheist that believes in a perfect God, I think you have to have that dichotomy,
Excellent, yeah.
But I think where the Christianity comes in is the guilt and the shame for your state of being,
Yes.
I think, at least from my experience, in Islam, there's not as much guilt and shame for it, more so desire to be more perfect, to be better.
Yes. And as we get through this meditation, Descartes is going to introduce this desire towards perfection, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Second hypothesis. Val, Nalla, what do you think? Second hypothesis, there is no author of my being because I have always existed.
I've always been existing.
I've never not existed, so he's right.
Yeah.
It's a good hypothesis. I like this one.
I've always been in being. I've always been being around. My being has been being, and
You know, I had a when I was working at Cafe Oz, I actually had like one of the fellow barmen, Miles, who was a very good barman, which some people might think is simple, but it's not simple at all. Anyway, he actually said we're all just energy, right? And you come into being and you die. It's just transformations of energy. And so he was actually saying, as energy per se, I've always existed.
yeah, well, I mean, it's a classic kind of materialist answer, right? Of what is the human soul or whatever. It's just what's the transformation of matter. The matter is going to take this form at this particular moment. It has a causal relation. Every act, or what's the great? Just because I was thinking of, sorry, in Tunisia they've got their own Colosseum, right?
Yep.
Built by the Romans, as big as. Unfortunately, we got there a bit too late. It's in a town called El Gem, but it's I've seen the one in Rome. This one is in El Gem, just as big. Incredible Colosseum. And of course, in my stupid early 2000s brain, I always think of, Gladiator, the film with our great Russell Crowe.
That's how my dad learned English.
Yeah, exactly. Incredible film.
Yeah.
From Russell Crowe.
From Gladiator, yeah.
Wow.
Incredible movie.
He loved that movie.
Every action that we do resonates in eternity, right? Which is a quote from Marcus Aurelius.
Yeah.
It's a shame that the second film was just that hurt me.
No sequels.
That hurt
Never
me
do a sequel.
so bad. But that's the materialist answer, right? Every action resonates throughout eternity. Matter is just a transformation. So in that sense, as matter, you have always existed. But Descartes not going to be very happy with that, is he?
Isn't Descartes' I as well the thinking, being like the thinking self, right?
Yeah.
So if you're saying the I, then the matter cannot be you to Descartes.
Exactly, because the I is not matter. It's not material.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, no mate. Rene was rolling in his grave whilst Valentine was running with that hypothesis.
Oh yeah,
with
no,
that
he was not happy
interpretation.
with me.
Nobody, he said, like, Rene was saying, like, nobody has ever called me a materialist. What the hell are you doing?
Yeah.
Leave it alone.
I was just saying there is a materialist way to understand these things, but we can hear his head turning across the Seine.
Wait.
His head is
What is
across the
the-
Seine.
His head is across the
His
Seine?
skull.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, his skull. So he's
In the
originally
catacombs?
No. Like, I can just tell our listeners, like, if you do come to study, like Nalla did, just next to the Seine in Paris, in this very special little place that we belong to here, and if you do one of our classes, we will take you on a field trip, and the task will be find Descartes' head.
Yeah.
And you will succeed.
and you will find it. But
an
not to
It's a
adventure to go
15-minute
on.
walk from here.
Yeah.
50. I might go after this.
Yeah.
Wait a minute.
Well, I mean, I when I was in Sweden, I believe, and in Stockholm, I think it was 2 years ago, I went and saw the original burial place of Descartes in Stockholm because, of course, he gets influenza and dies after being invited to Stockholm to tutor Queen Christina.
Yeah.
Queen Christina. He
By
gets
royal
influenced-
command, he got pneumonia.
And, yep, dies. He's originally buried there, and then his remains get transported back to Paris, and his head... Now, where's the rest of his body? That's my
In the
question.
Pantheon.
Oh.
I
Yeah.
didn't s-
So the head is separate from the body.
Oh.
That's kind of crazy, though. Did he
Right.
ask for that? Yo, he would have loved this guy. I got an idea.
Oh, dear.
So he's got a tricky counter to this hypothesis. So he says, okay, you want to say I've existed forever, right? But he says it's one thing, to exist from moment to moment, right? Like you have an infinite chain of like causes in your ideas. There's an infinite chain of physical causes, efficient causes at the level of bodies in motion because he's a mechanist, right? Yeah. But he's going to say you can divide up your existence. And he almost like sneaks in like a theory of time here because he says that every moment, every period of our existence is independent from other periods.
Yeah, there's no necessary relationship between the past and the present. And
Yeah.
it's like, it is really infinitely divided in
Yeah,
the way
yeah.
that...
We're in like a Lego universe
Yeah.
as well because he's got like chunks, like the periods of time in which the I exists
Yeah.
are like chunks that are juxtaposed onto each other.
Yeah.
And he says that just because like you're existing in one period of time, that has nothing to do with the fact that you're going to be existing in another period of time.
Yeah.
So you need this independent cause
Yeah.
that thrusts you into existence at any given moment.
And that's going to hold it all together. And I do like that you said that he sneaks it in, because reading this meditation again, where you know what the line is that he uses, Ol? He goes, anyone who has thought carefully about time will know that this is the case. And it's like,
That's a banger. Anyone who's thought carefully.
yeah,
about
that's all he says. He does no, but yes, of course, as Ol just described, it's like, yeah, it's like there needs to be this other cause that is holding all of these little Lego blocks together, right? There's no internal necessity between the past and the present at the level of the individual. So this is him trying to be like, okay, there's external causes that are guaranteeing that I am. It's an interesting distinction, right, that he makes between that is preserving me.
But you do see cause and effect at the level of the individual, though, no? And that would be a link between the past and the present.
Yeah.
Well, he kind of separates that out. So I had this conversation with a taxi driver once.
Yeah.
And he basically said to me, he said, like, who is the author of your being?
Yeah.
And I said, like, I had one of Descartes' answers, like the third hypothesis. I said, my parents, you know. And I said, you know, there was a sperm, there was an egg, they happened to come together. I'm quite lucky, you know. And he said, no, like God is the author of your being. And I said, God's got other things to do, like, you know. And he said, no. And I said, look, come on, like God, he created the universe in the beginning, and then it just kind of unfolds. And he said, no, all the time, for every single being, whether inanimate or animate, you know, animal, human, plant, mineral, they're all continually being sustained by God. Yeah. And I said, how does he get the time? And he said,
time.
He is time. He's
Outside of
eternal.
time.
What kind of taxis? What kind of taxis are you getting, Ol?
I need to get on this ride service.
Yeah, is this like?
They ask me what I do. I tell them I'm an honest guy. And
Where
then we
was
get
it?
into it.
Where was this in Paris?
This was in Paris.
Ah, yes. Okay, lovely. Okay, so there is this idea that he's trying to defend, I suppose, in this, where it's like God is continually causing everything all of the time, right?
Yeah.
Right. So he says, if you want to always exist, it's not just enough to have like before and after kind of physical or mental causes. You've got to have like what's called God's concurrence. Like you've got to have this continual power creating the entire universe. Like Leibniz used to talk about the emanation or fulguration of the universe at any moment. So the universe is kind of flourishing and mushrooming like all of the time. And he says, like, this is a tricky bit. He says, like, if I needed that, it's like to eternally exist, if I needed to be, I would need to continually be creating myself like all the time. So this is like the maximal version of the first hypothesis.
Yeah.
Right. If I was capable of doing that, then as a thinking thing, because I have access to my mind, I would be aware of that power. And guess what?
I'm not.
There's no such power. I'm not aware of such a power.
And that's what's so interesting, because he is like really precise about saying, I am talking about the thinking thing, right? There's no question for Descartes. He's not talking about the reproduction of the body.
Yeah.
No,
right. He's not talking about, I reproduce my body, I go have lunch.
You drink your glass of milk in the morning.
Yeah, glass of milk in the morning, wine in the evening.
Protein shakes.
Exactly. Again, for all the gym goers that are listening to this, it's like you reproduce your body, and Descartes' not interested in that whatsoever,
Not
right?
at all.
He's only concerned with how does the thinking thing continue, and it's like, well, it can't be causing it can't be the thing, otherwise you would be aware exactly of this power of being able to reproduce yourself, right?
So doesn't work. Second hypothesis doesn't work.
Wow, that's
That's
really
disappointing.
I'm really glad that I'm glad that you two are the ones going through the other three hypotheses, and I'm glad that we worked out that I'm perfect early on.
Special case right there.
Yes.
So let's try out this third hypothesis.
This is a pretty obvious one, Nalla. You were produced by your parents.
Yep.
That seems right.
Yeah, I mean, makes sense to me. But
And they are imperfect.
yeah.
Does any child? But I'm interested in this because the hypothesis 3 is as we said in the intro to this section, it's like this is the psychoanalytic moment, right? It's like every child. Parents are perfect in the mind of a child, right?
Mate, up till about the age of 10.
Oh yeah, no, but that's what I mean. But when we look at it as in this kind of causal sequence, it's like parents are the idea of perfection that you have for a really long time, and it's only realizing that they are not perfect. Sometimes that's a process that people never get to. They always have this kind of, absolute reverence for the perfection of the father. I reproduce everything. All of the ideas that I inherited from my parents are necessarily correct. They have only the right ideas. I can never call them into question. There's an idea of perfection that the child has, usually with the parents, perhaps.
And there are like systems of belief based around this. I think like there's a lot of ancestor venerating cultures where
absolutely it's like the ancestors were correct. They never they never err. You have to follow. The tradition. Well, I mean, this is the basis of tradition, isn't it? This is where we kind of have this idea of inheritance that Descartes, for those of us who have been following from the first episode, what he does in Discourse and the Method and what he does in the Meditations on First Philosophy is exactly, I'm getting rid of all of my inherited beliefs, right? So he's trying to, and where did a lot of my inherited beliefs come from?
parents.
Tradition and from my parents, right?
And what is tradition but your parents' parents and their parents' parents and their parents' parents?
Well, this is where he's going to be going, right?
Yep.
That's what he passes on.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I'm still left with this question: why can't my parents be the cause of me?
Well, I'm sorry, Val, but your parents are imperfect.
I refuse to believe that.
Your parents are imperfect, and yet you have absolute perfection within you, Val.
Well, we already established that by the first hypothesis. I know that I am perfect.
No, not you. I said you have a mark within you of perfection.
Oh.
Not you yourself are quite imperfect. Sorry, Val.
Yeah, well, I'm
Your
not...
parents are imperfect. You're imperfect. But so is Nalla, and so am I. And so are all of our listeners. We're all imperfect.
We're all imperfect, and
But
then we kind of,
we've got an index of absolute perfection inside us, which is the idea of God.
Yeah, the
Right?
one absolutely perfect thing. The
Yeah.
infinite, the actual, as we were talking about in the last episode.
So his argument here, like Val, like drawing on that mark of infinity that you've got inside you, he's I mean, you might just say, oh, he's just repeating himself, but I'm sorry, this is philosophy. He's got to be consistent. If he came up with a proof of the existence of God that he thinks works, he's going to repeat it here. He says it's relevant here. He says you can't have an idea of this absolutely maximum reality without it being caused by something that has at least as much reality, right?
Yes.
And so that's why I can't come from something imperfect. Because if I came from something imperfect, I would never have an idea inside myself of absolute perfection.
Yeah, and this is an idea that can't just, like, it can be transmitted. Of course, your parents can tell you about the existence of God, but then, as you were saying, as I've shockingly just learned, my parents are not perfect. They would have had to get that idea from somewhere else, and so on and so on. And this is the kind of causal chain that Descartes' going to set up to get to this infinite, perfect thing that is God in a similar way, just as he was doing in Hypothesis 2, this kind of causal chain in the second hypothesis, right? There's a cause of causing everything in existence, and the thing that is causing me, right? So this is he's talking about the chain that keeps us together.
I have a question around this chain. Descartes earlier said in his first hypothesis that he couldn't derive his existence from himself because he wouldn't create something that's imperfect.
Yeah.
So why then does the perfect being of God create us as imperfect?
I'm not even sure how I would go about answering that.
God is not personal. This particular God that Descartes is entertaining in the Meditations is a deeply philosophical God who in the end just serves as a kind of guarantee for the truth of our clear and distinct ideas. So it's never a question of God having a desire or God having needs or God existing in time. God is just kind of flat. He's eternal. He's perfect.
Being itself.
Right. And he's just continually producing. And I guess humanity is just one of his productions. I mean, Descartes, because he's a philosopher, he comes up with a counter to the third hypothesis, right? Which I just went through. And then, as I've said previously on this podcast, philosophy is a blood sport. It's like boxing. Somebody counters, like you do a hook, somebody counters, blocks that and goes for a jab. And then what happens? There's an uppercut that comes, and Descartes imagines this uppercut. He says, yeah, somebody tricky might say, okay, fine, your parents were imperfect, but what if you had a philosophical father? Nalla had a philosophical father.
Yep.
I had a philosophical father who filled me with Aldous Huxley, the perennial philosophy.
Okay. My father was a sportsman, so definitely not a different sort of philosophy. Maybe like a latent Aristotelian or something, but I'm more on the sports side.
Right. So you got a philosophical dad, and say that your dad or your mother, why not? Except that my mother's an atheist.
Wow.
Your dad or your mother also has the idea of God as a perfect being, and they just pass that down to you.
Yeah.
And Descartes goes, okay, fine. You've got fancy parents. You got fancy parents who read my meditations.
Yeah.
Great, congratulations. But where did they come from, man?
Yeah.
Where did they come from?
Yeah.
And then you say, well, my grandparents were philosophical as well. They also read Descartes' meditations.
Yeah.
They also have that idea. And he goes, man, what have you got there?
Infinite regress.
You've got an infinite regress.
Yeah, you're just gonna keep going backwards and backwards, and Descartes doesn't like infinite regresses.
It's a bad infinity,
It
just
is
like Hegel says.
Yeah, it's
Do
a
you
bad.
think that Tiktaalik believed in God?
In who?
God, the Tiktaalik?
I'm not familiar with this one.
It's the first fish to crawl.
The first fish to crawl out. Were they a believer? Well,
Yeah.
I would love to be able to follow the chain, the causal chain all the way back. Did they know about God? Well, maybe. We'll have to. Well, that's a line of investigation.
I'll ask
that we'll
him
have
next
to
time I
follow.
see him.
Yeah.
Well, he's going to, I mean, like Descartes going to go, he's going to borrow something from Aristotle. He says, it's got to stop somewhere, this regress.
It's got to finish.
Everybody, in your family for generations have read my fantastic meditations. They all have an idea of a perfect God in their minds.
Yeah.
But they, like that chain of descendancy, that ancestry, it has to stop somewhere. There has to be a primal cause.
The buck stops with me, It has to finish. Otherwise, you run into this problem of the infinite regress. And of course, what's the final cause of everything? It has to be God. It cannot
right.
be anything other than God in all of its actual perfection, in its infinity. God has to be the first cause. This is Meditations on First Philosophy. This is the first principle. But what?
So that hypothesis is thrown out the window. That one doesn't work either.
No, because otherwise you just fall into an infinite regress, right? Yeah. Like
All right.
Mom and dad.
But
One last hypothesis, the fourth hypothesis. Let's just try out this one. Try it on. I think I'd actually like to say that, this is actually the most contemporary hypothesis.
Yes.
I reckon a lot of my political ecology friends, a lot of the people that believe that we're just basically compost, following Donna Haraway, people who are into like vibrant matter, vital matter, all the different forms of vitalism that we've got nowadays.
Yeah.
Like all of them basically say, what are human beings? Where do we come from? It's just a bunch of molecules dancing around.
Yeah.
One big happy family, multiple partial causes. That's what I came from. I am just a happy accident.
Yeah.
Could have been somebody else.
An evolutionary,
Yeah.
and just a product of evolution, the movement of matter, and here I am at some
That's
particular
right.
point.
And I don't have one cause. There is no one author of my being.
Yeah.
In fact, the whole idea of authorship is silly.
Yeah.
There are just multiple little factors all contributing, like a kind of we've got the swarm coming back in here.
Yeah.
We've got a cloud. We've got like a confluence of currents, like the opposite of a river delta, whatever the hell that is.
No one knows
Well,
what that is.
If you go up the ladder, though, for these partial causes, will there be multiple first causes? Will there be multiple causes without cause?
Well, I mean, this is the fatal philosophical question that all of these partial causes believers, have to contend with at a certain point in time. Once you can't just continue into infinity, otherwise you'll have an infinite regress.
Well, I have to say, Val, that I think our Deleuzean friends are going to quite happily proceed into infinity at this point.
Yes. Well, I mean, there's a very nice. It's on precisely this point that another French philosopher, Alain Badiou, accuses Deleuze of being a fascist, precisely for this tendency towards a bad infinity. He says a bad infinity lends itself towards fascism because it has no way of bracketing off the world, right? It's in this essay called the fascism of the potato, and it's Badiou just going in on Deleuze's infinity as one that has politically disastrous consequences. So I know that's a way in which the
Yeah.
Deleuzians want to have their world.
Well, them and their rhizomes, man. I
They
mean,
have
like
rhizomes.
Badiou basically said you're a bunch of potato heads.
They are, yeah, and they willingly admit it. But again, as Nalla just said very well, it's okay if you accept that there's just all these partial causes. Where did they go? Where did they go to? Where does the chain stop?
Well, funnily enough, like Descartes is not going to go upstream. He's going to go downstream with this one, right?
Yeah.
So he's going to say, here I am. And he loves pulling this one out. He says, you seem to have forgotten that I have an idea of God in my mind.
Yes.
And guess what?
Yeah.
One of the things about that idea of God, because here we are in monotheism,
Yep.
is that God is one.
Yeah, it's unified, because if God wasn't unified, it would be partial. And what's partial? It's imperfect.
Yep.
Right.
And then you've just destroyed the idea of perfection, right?
So basically he's saying, like, if you're just like a multiple kind of assemblage, if what brings your being about is just this accidental confluence of multiple causes, then you would never have an idea of unity. Like there would be no source. Because remember, for Descartes, like ideas are real. They're not just
Yeah.
like figments of our imagination. They're not just a product of our upbringing.
Yeah.
Because we can do maths, and we do maths with ideas, and maths works, we have to admit that ideas are real. The unity of the idea of God is a real property of that idea. It has to be explained, and you cannot explain unity by multiplicity.
No, exactly, because, that's one of the problems of an infinite regress. It's like you lose the ability to explain without a theory of causality that stops somewhere, or that you have a way of bracketing off. It just continues, and you lose all of your explanatory power, being able to explain, well, where did this cause come from? You just get stuck in an infinite regress, and then, you get stuck there forever, right?
Well, here we are. He's just rejected the fourth hypothesis. This is a procedure of elimination. He's basically said, if you accept that there is no God, that God is not the author of my being, then where do I come from? I come from myself, I generate myself, or I've always existed, or I come from my imperfect parents, right? Or I come from multiple partial causes. None of this works. What's left? What's left?
I have to have come from God. God must be the author of my existence.
You ready for the fanfare? You ready for the trumpets?
Yeah.
This is one of those Mahler moments in
Yep.
Descartes. It must be, I'm quoting,
Yeah.
it must be concluded that the mere fact that I exist and have within me an idea of a most perfect being, that is God, provides a very clear proof that God indeed exists.
Wow. We need to get this guy speaking to a princess or something.
Yeah. More princesses. we need to get speaking to more princesses,
Yeah.
more queens.
Yeah.
I'm interested, though, given Descartes' general use of language, very clear proof, not clear and distinct, not very, it's not a qualifier that is certain. I feel like, he's still got a bit more to say to us, right?
Well, it's one of those moments where, the when you're reading the meditation, sometimes as a reader, you suddenly feel implied, and you suddenly feel like the author's actually talking directly to you.
Yeah.
And it's like one of those moments when he says, this is a very clear proof. You just think, hang on. Is it very clear for everybody else? Because it's not clear to me. What are you telling me, Descartes?
Yeah.
Or like when he says, for anybody who's thought deeply about the nature of time, and I said to myself, have I thought deeply about the nature of time?
I haven't thought about that. I haven't thought about that recently, or given much consideration to how time works.
Yeah. Well, it's our job. It's our job.
Yeah.
That's what we're supposed to do. But
Yeah, and also, if I'm going to be a little bit mean to Descartes in this sense as well, it's like, this is the big unveiling, this is the big reveal. I have an idea of this thing, therefore that thing exists.
well, I mean, I'm going to jump onto Descartes' side again.
Yeah.
I'm going to say, Val, you got to take your ideas seriously.
I think, that's never been a good idea for anyone.
So, again, classic move for a philosopher. He's got this fabulous conclusion, but he's not going to give up with this doubting and this inquiring. He's going to say, okay, fine. Where did I get this idea from?
Yeah.
Right. And I think this is a great question. So a lot of people, when we talk to, if some of us are not believers and we talk to people who are believers, or the other way around, like one of the questions we ask is like, well, where did you get this idea of God from in the first place?
Yeah.
Was it just your parents? Did you make it up?
Yeah.
And some of the classic atheists, they actually say it's all just made up. It's an illusion. Like religion is the opium of the masses, as Marx said once.
Yeah.
So here again, he's going to quickly go through, and here it's far quicker. He's going to quickly go through 3 different hypotheses as to where this idea actually came from, how it got implanted in my mind.
Yeah. Where did I get this idea of an infinitely perfect being, that is actual? Where would it come from?
Well, was it the sunset that you were looking at across the Sahara? Did you have one of those moments of sublimity?
I almost feel like I did. I felt there was an immense unity that was presenting itself before me, because there's often this idea that the desert is this vast emptiness, but I've had the exact opposite experience. Right, I was like, this desert there's nothing empty. All right, so the question is going to be, okay, so where did I get this idea of God from?
Yeah, and this is basically a question of how does the infinite become known to the finite? So 3 hypotheses. First one, I got it from the senses. Yeah. So I had some kind of sublime experience. It was a landscape, it was the mountains, it was the Pacific Ocean, something like that. Yeah. And, a lot of us, the romantics, we like to think this, but he basically says, hey, anything you get from the senses can be a surprise.
Yeah,
right?
And you can be led, you can be deceived, you can make errors, we've been going through this the whole time, sense perceptions deceive us all the time.
Yeah, and he says the whole thing about the idea of God that we've got in our mind, there's no surprise about that. It's permanently there.
But there's only no surprise for people who were raised or born or had this idea of a monotheistic God. There's an example in Islam, actually, the story of Abraham. He was surprised by this idea of God that he got after looking at the night sky and seeing the stars move. He got this sense of monotheism, this sense of sublimity from this view, and he became a monotheist after that.
So maybe this is the unity that Descartes' talking about. Abraham sees the unity of everything, but he gets it through his sense perceptions, right? But this is what Descartes' not happy with.
Yeah. Well, this is the second hypothesis. Basically, he says, okay, sure, you might have some kind of input or whatever, but it's one thing to have patterns of the stars in the sky, but the idea of God is slightly different. So maybe I invented the idea of God, right? That's his second hypothesis.
Yeah.
But he says, here, beautiful counter, he says, look, whenever I invent something, and let me tell you, Val, I invent lots of things in my head all the time.
Constantly.
Yeah, like Mr. Lawless, remember that guy in my head?
Yes, I do remember your imaginary friend, yes.
Yeah, so with my imaginary friend, he can have a top hat or not, he can have a walking cane or not, a walking stick or not, but you can't do that with the idea of God, because the idea of God is this maximal idea, right? You can't take anything away to it, you can't add anything to it, because it's already perfect, right? So second hypothesis throws that out the window as well. Finally, this is the hypothesis he's going to like. This is the one he's going to stay with.
This one is going to stick.
The idea of God is innate within me. It's built into me. I'm a human being. I have a mind. These minds, just like IKEA furniture comes with a bunch of hex keys and little twiddly bits, a human mind always comes with an idea of God built into it.
All right, yeah. And so one of the things that's really important to understand, okay, so Descartes says that God is an idea that is innate inside of me, but I only have this innate idea because there is an external cause. God is not just an idea. It is something, he is something that really exists and creates things, right? This is the idea of the mark of the craftsman. I am created by God. I am not the author of my own existence. This is the mark. I bear the mark of God within me. I am created by God.
You've been signed by God.
Yeah.
That's really interesting. I mean, there's a Sufi theosopher, Ibn Arabi, who has this idea of insan al-kamil, which is this idea that man is like a mirror that shows the reflection of God. And it's insan al-kamil means the perfect man. And it's his concept that man, as it should be, is the mirror reflection of God in all of his infinitely good qualities.
So we're imperfect, but we can mirror perfection.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a nice idea.
Yeah, so we have because we can mirror this idea of perfection precisely, and Descartes has that nice little line where he says, it is like, this is why I'm created in God's image, right? Because I bear the mark of this craftsman.
Well, I think that this is such a fabulous passage that for all those of you who haven't yet bought the book, so that you can follow along with us, there's this fantastic passage where he says, "It is no surprise that God, in creating me, should have placed this idea in me to be, as it were, the mark of the craftsman stamped on his work. the mere fact that God created me is a very strong basis for believing that I am somehow made in his image and likeness.
Exactly. So this is exactly the idea that God creates man in his image. This is where he's kind of following the kind of classic Christian narrative or the Christian script. God creates man in his image. I bear the mark of creation. I have this innate idea of infinity within me. I can't be the author of it. It must have been caused by some external real thing. This is my proof of God, right?
So God is with us all the time. Like we don't need to go into a church. We don't need to go into a mosque or a synagogue or any particular holy place. We've got access to God in our minds if we just pay attention to that unique idea that we have. Like that's the gateway to God in a way. And that's one of these kind of like democratic moments in Descartes, which I like so much. We're all equal before God. We've all got equal access to God. There's nothing special about, who your parents were, what part of society you were born into, caste or anything like that. Everybody's equal before God.
Yeah, this is the natural light of reason that he says that everyone is in possession of. And, for people who have been following along with the episodes, this is, again, this fiercely democratic or egalitarian moment that Descartes is setting up against Aristotle. Right, this is the killing. He creates a new father to replace the imperfect father, that has been the one responsible for writing all of the inequalities of the world. Aristotle says, the world is by ontologically uneven, unequal, etc., etc. Isn't this just a desire, though, for a new infinity? Is Descartes just replacing an old father with a new father?
Well, there's no just about it. I mean, it's an enormous project to actually replacing one epoch's like father figure with another one, like opening up modernity, as so many people say, like Descartes was responsible for. That's an enormous gesture. So, I mean, I think we've got to place this moment within the arc that began, from the very first meditation. We know that Descartes doubted away the external world. He doubted away other people, of course. He doubted away even his own body. Yeah. He found himself alone in this incredibly reduced universe. He's just a thinking thing. And he basically needed to, because his overall project is not to doubt things away. No. His overall project is to found science, to find a foundation for science.
To ground knowledge.
Yeah. So he needs to repopulate the universe. Yes. And in this, the third meditation, he's finally repopulated. And this universe now consists of two beings.
Two beings. Thinking substance, myself, the thinking thing, and God.
And what kind of universe is that, Val?
There's two things. Well, I mean, it's got everything in it.
Yeah, that's the universe.
You'd like to be there in this universe?
In one fell swoop, he's given us back everything that he's taken away, hasn't he?
You haven't got everything. You've just got God. You haven't got like carpentry. You haven't got stones. You haven't got forests. All you've got is like an infinitely perfect creator and little Descartes.
But then the infinitely perfect creator created everything in existence, right? Now we're done. We don't need to go in any more meditations. This is
Hold your horses. He doesn't know that anything else exists yet. He hasn't got there. That's like meditation 4 and meditation 5's drama. Yeah. At the moment, he's still in an incredibly simple dyadic, to use a fancy word, dyadic universe of the one thinking thing, the I that speaks and thinks. And this is, I mean, like, seriously, guys, like, if you were to live in a universe just reduced to, like, you and your partner, right, whoever that partner were, would you choose to have an infinitely perfect author God as your partner?
Well, I mean, this is Descartes sticking to his dualism, right? I've got me as the minimal substance, and then I've got my maximal substance, and what else could there be in between, right?
I think it's very strange. I mean, it's a very emotional moment for young Rene as well, because, I mean, I just want to read out. This is one of my favorite passages, I think, in the whole of the meditations. He basically says, look, I am incomplete and dependent. I am an incomplete and dependent thinking thing that aspires without limit to ever greater and better things. He on whom I depend has within him all those greater things, actually and infinitely, and is God.
It is quite a moving moment, right, in this entire process, right? Because we're on the precipice of something here again, as Descartes likes to do at the end of every single meditation. It's like, okay, there's a thinking thing, there is God. Descartes is no longer alone in the universe. There's God as well there, but is this God really his friend?
He's not a personal God.
He's not a personal God. It's not one that I invented to suit my own fancies.
He's got everything that Descartes wants, but Descartes doesn't have.
Yeah. And what kind of... But this is the thing. What kind of God is this? Is it a malicious... You know, he's been talking about evil demons and evil geniuses and things like that.
This is like Joyce's nobody,
Yeah.
you know. I mean, this God is like nobody, and at the same time, he's like a big daddy. He's like the perfect daddy,
Yeah.
you know.
Who came up with this theory?
Joyce, James Joyce.
James Joyce. But I mean, this is this kind of interesting thing because the way that he closes out this meditation reminds me of like the letter to the Sorbonne that we discussed in an earlier episode, right? He says, okay, why am I writing this? Faith alone is not the grounds to make non-believers accept the existence of God, right? If you already have faith, then you don't need convincing. What I'm trying to do is I want to convince non-believers through a rational method of the existence of God. This is what we've done in this meditation, right? But there's an interesting callback at the end of this meditation to that letter, in my view, where he says, for just as we believe through faith that the supreme happiness of the next life consists solely in the contemplation of the divine majesty, so experience tells us that this same contemplation, albeit much less perfect, enables us to know the greatest joy of which we are capable in this life, right? So there's this interesting inversion, right? It's, you know, you don't need to look to the afterlife, or you don't need to look to... He's trying to give us like a practical method and a guide of the greatest joy, even though it's less perfect than the afterlife, of what you can do in this life. Right? There's a real practice. There's a practice in Descartes.
So
That's
if you
interesting.
if you meditate, he's saying you are going to achieve some kind. You're going to attain some kind of highest joy.
Yeah.
Is that the idea?
A greater perfection, right? Even though this meditation is, you know, it's not going to be as perfect as being joined in the afterlife with God through faith and stuff like that. There's a practice that you yourself can go through, that anyone can go through, that will lead you to this higher state of perfection, the greatest joy that you can experience in this life. You know, we may be finite, but there is a great joy that you can have.
But this is like, is this like prayer, or this is like meditation? Like,
And what is this joy? Is it a joy that is a transcendental one, or is it one that's very like grounded and rooted in, you know, the physical and the here and now?
well, he hasn't got a body yet, does he?
Well, he hasn't given us back the body, so maybe it's a joy of the intellect. I don't know. It feels like there's a action, because like in the passage that you read out, Oliver, you know, there's this real tension that's going to be following us through in this kind of tension between I am a finite thing full of imperfections. There's a real negative kind of view that Descartes has of the subject in a certain respect.
Yeah.
But he's giving us this, you are not just this imperfect, you know, full of doubt, full of, you know, error kind of thing. There's a passage, there's a way in which you can attain greater and greater perfections, right? And if you go through these meditations, if you go through this practice in this life, maybe I'm being too existentialist with Descartes, but there's something in which you don't just suffer from finitude. There's a way in which your potentiality as a finite thing, you're full of potential towards greater and greater perfections in this life.
Yeah.
You do not need to wait until the afterlife to get into contact with. Well, not contact is perhaps not the right word, but you know, there's something there. There's a potential. There's a potentiality that is going beyond itself.
We all got to get to that gateway.
Yes.
We all got to get to that gateway.
Well, thank you thank you everyone for listening. Thank you so much. Thank you, Nalla, for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely, it's been a real pleasure.
Likewise.
On this leg of the journey that we're up to, end of meditation 3.
Yeah, so next episode we'll be launching into episode 4 and trying to figure out whether Descartes actually does have a friend.
Yes, and we may be joined by some other friends along the way. All right.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.